All right. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Sarah. All right. Well, what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about like some things that work and talking about how we know what quantifiably works in sales and marketing. Because we can also complain, but it's also helpful, like, to talk about the things that are working.
Yeah, the things that work. So, how do we organize our thoughts on this? Do we start with maybe chronologically things that work in marketing and how they ultimately get handed off into sales, and then how those things work? And because when we think about end to end, the at least the impression is something starts over here in marketing and it walks all the way over into the closed one deal bucket right here.
Exactly.
Very easy.
Like, imagine ice skating.
Yeah, you just glide. It's like baton ice skating, right? You've
Yeah,
got
exactly.
marketer hands it off to your biz dev, who hands it off to your sales rep, who hands it off to delivery. It's
Yeah.
very easy, and I'm sure everybody is wildly successful at this, so we're preaching to the choir. But yeah, let's dig in. So, where do you believe a good entry point for this conversation is from a marketing perspective?
So I think from a marketing side, it is tying, is segmenting marketing activities and tying those marketing activities to passing through to sales and then to revenue so that you have an understanding of what marketing activities are actually contributing to the pipeline. Some marketing activities are going to be purely brand. And so ideally there's budget and time for brand activities that don't have a direct correlation to pipeline. But otherwise, you want to segment between your SEO activities that are driving inbound leads and organic. You want to segment between your advertising activities that are targeted to accounts and driving engagement. You want to track your content marketing that's driving downloads, your events, right? So you want to be looking at those different buckets and seeing how they turn into pipeline and the cost against those.
Yeah. So I'm I'm a dumb sales guy, right?
Hmm.
So we're segmenting marketing activities, going way back to the beginning of what you just said. I heard, brand activities. Let's just create some neat buckets, loose buckets of
Yeah,
what those marketing activities would be.
of brand activities.
Yeah. No, marketing activities
Oh,
generally. So brand is one of them. What are
yeah,
other marketing activities?
yeah. So there's I would say the two big buckets are like directly driving pipeline and indirectly driving pipeline. And directly driving pipeline are things like doing you're doing a dinner and you want to get people to that dinner and you want those people to convert into revenue. You're doing a webinar, you're doing like some discrete event where you're going to have a set number of people that's in your target audience that you want to take a certain activity and you want to hand off those people to sales to follow up with.
Got it.
But that exists in a world in which your brand is known and understood and likable. And that is a bunch of marketing activities that isn't directly tied to revenue. It's like having a nice website, it's having ongoing social media, it's having your leaders have a presence in the world. Maybe it's doing conferences and having a presence there. But it's a bunch of marketing activities that take time and money, but you can't tie like a specific uh, homepage design to a direct correlation between pipeline activity, between something becoming sales.
So wait a minute, you're telling me that a particular shade of cobalt on a website isn't going to generate 5 opportunities in a month?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like your clothing budget, right? Like you will be undateable. You don't have a clothing budget. But it doesn't like your t-shirt is not going to guarantee a date.
So I have to be fashionable and well spoken.
Yeah, exactly. You have to eat the cost of being fashionable enough.
Got it.
And then, yeah, know what you're talking about.
So let's just for the case of the conversation, how would you? The direct stuff is easy, right? You can very easily plot that and correlate it. So let's play with the more abstract of the indirect, the branding stuff. And I would consider, social would fall under the branding, right? In addition to your website, things like that. So what and this is why I ask, because I feel like that is such a esoteric, abstract kind of black box for I'm putting money into the site. I'm putting money into social. I'm putting money into these things, these events, what have you. And I'm putting a quarter in and I'm not seeing a dollar come out of it. So why am I doing it? Right. That's the question that is generally asked by anyone that's financing these activities.
Yeah.
So how would you, or just given your experience, your vast experience, what are some like success stories of what's worked with the indirect marketing activities, and what is the story behind that? Like, how would you say, listen, geniuses, obviously an opportunity isn't going to come out of cobalt on the website or a tweet, right? But there is a benefit to that. And how
Yeah.
would you qualify or quantify that benefit of doing that work consistently?
Yeah. Well, it's setting. I think it's setting the stage for the rest of the pipeline to move more smoothly, which is like setting your sales team up for success and setting an expectation for the size of the company, the success of the company, the professionalism of the company, right? It's uh, it's sort of defining the experience to make all of the other things easier because your site is fast and easy, so it's more trustworthy. Your social media is engaging, so people have a sense of like, oh, these are the people who work in a company, these are their points of views, right? It's sort of building that quality of experience that you want for your brand so that it makes all of the other selling activities that come after uh, congruent and easier because you sort of set an expectation of what this is going to be like, and how relevant your company is, and especially for smaller brands that don't have a real brand, right? Smaller brands that don't have a brand like a big enough market share to actually be known. It's really important for your brand to look like super polished and buttoned up. And I've worked with small brands that appear much bigger because it's a super buttoned up brand presentation. And we look at our competitors and they're kind of all over the place. And
And
we have like a super polished approach.
and I would argue, just getting to the quantification of that. So you qualified it. The quantification of that is we have a storefront. We're visible in the marketplace. We have so many people visiting our like Google Analytics. We have this many site views. We have this many page views. We have this many click throughs. Like there's interactions that are happening. Social media impressions.
Yeah.
I would even argue, and I've seen this, and this is such a hard sell because again, there's always the mentality of the leadership, the board, etc., that it's like put a quarter in, get a dollar out. And you'll run something snapping way forward from marketing into business development. And say you make, a team of 5 people over the course of 2 months, makes 10,000 calls. And they've got, typically you'll have very low connect rates, right? And even then from connects, you have lower conversation rates and conversion rates. But for anyone that you connect with, say of those 10,000, you speak to 500, right? 5% connect rate. And of those 500, 250 you actually have some kind of a conversation. And how I would define a conversation is something of higher quality than not interested, or I don't do that, or you've got the wrong person. It's, oh yeah, like we are focused on improving our digital experience, or we are looking for a better supplier of gaskets for our trucks, or for our, and you have some back and forth and exchange of information. And maybe the impression is left, if a meeting isn't scheduled, it's, hey, well, send me an email. And you send them an email, and your signature has the website. And now someone that wasn't aware of your brand goes to your website, follows you on LinkedIn, connects with you on LinkedIn, maybe follows you on Twitter. It's the billboard, right? It's like you're driving down the highway every day, you see a McDonald's sign. I promise you, by Friday, you're going to have a craving for McDonald's. Unless you're, yeah.
And there's direct way. There's, there are easy ways to track brand awareness. Like in analytics, you see direct traffic, meaning people typed in your brand name and got to your site, and you can track your competitors and the keywords they're ranking on, and you can start winning against those. And a client I'm working with, he wants to reposition the company to be a B2B business partner, but his site looks like a local business. And he's like, I can't call up people and then direct them to my site. They're going to have one conversation that sounds one way, and the first thing they're going to do is Google my company. And if they get to my site, they'll be like, what? Yeah. That guy?
Yeah.
Trying to sell me on this thing? Like, it needs to support what you're trying to sell, right? Like, it's a vehicle for selling. But yeah, there are tons of ways of quantifying it and seeing what's working and what's not.
No, you bring up such a good point. We're simultaneously very curious. We've got this powerful tool of the internet. Literally, you're on it when you're talking to someone on the phone. They can just look you up right there in an instant. And we're also very suspicious. Like, think about how many people have been ripped off and pulled one over by, watch Wolf of Wall Street, right? How did that guy make money? Cold calling, selling penny stocks, man. Like, those days are gone of just calling someone and having them take you at your word and say, oh yeah, I should totally do this. Like, I should go all in. And time is treated as a valuable currency these days. So you're absolutely right. When they go look at your socials, when they go to your website and they want to get a sense of your brand, they want an immediate impression that I'm talking to a real person that is dateable, right? They're dressed very well, as I say in my raggedy gray t-shirt, and that they present themselves in a way that I'm like, this is somebody that I could be doing business with. This is a respectable organization.
Yeah. And then there's all of the brand checklist, right? Like, it's super clean brand that's really consistent. You need third-party proof. You need case studies. You need logos. You need whatever credentials and partners, like anyone else who can vouch for you, right? Like, back to the dating analogy. Like,
social proof.
You need proof.
Huge. Yeah. Again, that's how we're wired these days because of social media.
Yeah. So that right. That's all the it feels a little soft and fuzzy. It's super quantifiable because you can look at market share, you can look at brand, you can look at brand-driven traffic, you can look at performance on the site. You can see how long people stay on the site when they get there. They get there and they're like, oh, never mind, not what I expected. So it's very measurable.
So constructing your site, if I were to repeat back to you, paraphrasing or distilling, what works is having a visually appealing site that can answer core questions about what you do as a business, and that there's some social proof or metric validating that you do that well. Is that a fair statement? Is there anything you would add on to that?
Yeah, probably some case studies, some testimonials, some partners that you work with, anything to sort of like
authority
yourself and who you are in this whole ecosystem, right? So, and that you're using the same language that your competitors are using, so that people are like, oh, you're like this, right? So that you're contextualized within like a marketplace.
By the way, I'm sorry, I have to go down this path because I look at a lot of business websites. I really want an honest answer from you. How many times have you read through a website and maybe spent like a minute and you're still like, I have no fucking clue what these
are? Oh yeah, I mean, yeah.
Marketing jargon and like, we're going to make you the best optimized, amazing, beautiful, wonderful digital branding fun. And I'm just like, the sentence is just running on forever. And it's just.
And I mean, more and more I look at the like work. So I'm just like, what is it? Like, what is it that you do for businesses? Like, what is the thing? Because yeah, it's very hard to know. Yeah, and I mean, with AI writing, I just got a screenshot from an old colleague of ours, which was like he had searched the word unlock, and it was like a block of emails where the subject line was like unlock was used in like the first 3 words, and like I'm just so it just makes it more and more obscure. It just is very hard to understand.
Yeah, let's go down this. Let's go down this path because I agonize over writing emails. Like it probably takes me 20 or 30 minutes to write an email. I really think through. A funny story. When I was consulting, one of my clients like 3 years ago had this scheduled call with the CEO, 2 of his VPs, and a couple of account executives. And nobody showed up. Nobody showed up to the call. And I waited there for about 10 minutes. And nobody showed up. And I thought I closed the window with the video chat. And I had a screen share up because I was going to do a whole presentation and everything. And they were already paying me, right? But so I tabbed over to my Gmail and I started writing an email, like trying to mix that tone of like diplomatic but assertive. And the fucking CEO gets onto the call, but I had hit the mute button on my laptop. So he's like, Steve, I'm here. Steve, can you hear me? And he's watching me type this email for like 10 minutes. Now, I don't write anything like inappropriate or unprofessional, right? But he literally watches me for like 10 minutes, gets off the call. He goes, sends me a text. I've got my phone like right here. Sends me a text. He goes, man, I loved watching you write that email. We got to do more work together. We got on a call. He's like, you're just like me. Like, I watch you like write something. You're like, no, that's too strong. Back it up and delete it. And the reason I tell that story is the concept of using AI to write an email is so, I get it. It's easy, but it's a recycle of the templates, right? It's like throw a template in HubSpot, you know what I mean? And just fire it off to 500 people. And I've seen situations in the past where I've had my biz dev reps do that, right? Like just send the emails out, like I'd write the copy and then literally just fill in the fields, name, title, blah, blah, blah. But it would go to like 4 different people at the same company who would all be like, hey, look at this great personalized email that's worded the exact same way to each other. And they would bring it up on a meeting or something. Anyways, total tangent, but relative.
Sorry, I got a bunch of kids who just got home. I mean, it's truly like, it's like spray and pray. Like it's as if that concept had never happened because we have like the technology to be like, well, what if it actually worked? Like, well, what if we could just like do more of it. Like, I know it didn't work the first time around, and I know we talked about like how it doesn't really work, but like, what if we could just like automate it?
Yeah, I mean, what's cool is I know where we're headed. Like, kids, don't do it now. Like, stop using AI to send your freaking emails. Point taken, unlock, and stupid jargon. Like, people know what you're up to. Like, talk like a human being. Get like as much jargon and lexicon, and you sound dumb. And I fall in the same trap too. I sound dumb when I do it, and I regret when I send those emails that are like overly laden with that kind of stuff. But we are going to a place. I'll say this, and then we'll get back on track because we can go down a whole other rabbit hole. But we're going to get to a place where you just talking to your phone and you're like, "Hey, send an email to Bob," using my tone. Just tell him, and you're just prompting it, right? Tell him I feel bad. Tell him that, we're reworking the pricing proposal and we're going to get something back to his team. I need you to reference the data that's in our CRM. Just take a look at my notes and just send me the draft before you send. Like, we're going to hit Crazyville in like 5 years of that kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons. I always think, at least right now, I call it like AI, like a very eager, not very competent intern, where you're just like, okay, so go teach this. And like, they come back and you're like, okay, go try again. Like, and like the feedback loop and like the thinking at the beginning and the thinking at the end is the important part. So like, whatever tools you use to get to muddle through the middle, get better. But like, you gotta know what you want, and you gotta know like what's good. Like, you have to have taste. You have to know what's like good and like totally correct and all those things.
Yeah, and it saves you from making eye contact with the assistant and going, "Oh God."
Yeah, exactly.
You'll get there. You'll get there, sweetie. Anyway, sorry. Super long tangent. Apologize, everyone. So going back to another thing that I wanted to touch on, which I don't think there's a lot of appreciation for, but when I articulate it, you get these like ahas that are very easily forgotten. And here's what it is everything that you said about branding and marketing and everything that I said about, biz dev and you're running these campaigns, and you and I have even talked about it. And, I've had many an amazing marketing executive where we just kind of kumbaya'd over this. Is sales and marketing are, they're moving in two different directions. And every once in a while, they just happen to click right and magic happens, or it's just constant friction and they're grading on each other. And when you create this ecosystem, this environment where sales who's out here on the front line, they're brace for it. This is going to be like pretty revolutionary. They put their notes in the CRM, and they're good notes, not they're contextual and detailed. And I know this is crazy, guys. I apologize for speaking blasphemy, my fellow sales reps, but you do that, and then there's marketers, right? I'm not going to just crap on salespeople. There's marketers that don't go into the CRM, and they don't. It's just like everybody's drinking their own Kool-Aid and in their own kind of echo chamber or feedback loop. And then you wonder why nothing's ever working, or things like you have low frequency, high intensity, right? So like a low frequency is we got an inbound lead, right? But it only happens once every 4 to 6 weeks. And everybody gets excited when there's an inbound lead. Like, oh my God, we're doing something right. And, everybody kind of huddles around and we powwow and we kumbaya. And then it doesn't happen again. And then people start asking, well, why aren't there more inbound leads? Like what? And it's that exchange of information. And when you have a really good set of it's people, process, system. And when you have those dialed in, which takes work, by the way, it's not magic. It takes a lot of setting your ego aside and being open to risk and experimentation, and also having an understanding of you have to measure things, and that's work. Like you can't just like finger in the wind and go, it feels this way. Anyways, I'm belaboring the point. It's when you have sales and marketing communicating with one another frequently and then acting on that information that they're exchanging, dude, magic happens. That's what works. You'll notice sales is coming back to marketing saying, dude, we talked to 50 or 100 or 1,000 CIOs and they said this. And I was at a company where that happened. We were selling predictive analytics, and we had this tool that you could go in and you could look at a regional property and casualty insurance carriers, their combined ratio, their loss ratio, their risk portfolio. It was just like legally mandated after 2008, right? Like you had to have access to this information and they had to post it publicly. My genius self, who had never worked in this industry before, told my BDR team to go into this tool, call VPs of underwriting and actuary and say, hey, your loss ratio is down by 5 points in your combined. I think we can help improve that. Guess what their response was? Who the fuck are you calling me, dinky $2 million company in Denver? How dare you? But we learned and we went back to marketing, and marketing was putting out the same content. And we're like, that's pissing people off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then refine, iterate, and converse with your market, with your audience. And then we hit the right messaging, and it was like, it took off.
Yeah. I mean, I think that marketing's sort of weakness that can happen is over focusing on brand to the detriment of building pipeline. And part of that is in order to build pipeline well, there's the whole people component of sales and marketing working together, which is if the sales team are like, we're not going to pick up marketing leads, like we've got better deals to deal with. Like we don't want to deal with that nonsense. And like, unless both teams are compensated against the same metrics, marketing can produce like what they're calling marketing leads that are either highly valuable or not at all valuable, right? There's no qualification of what a marketing lead is. And sales can be like, no, thanks. Like I've got a deal coming up at the top that's like, it's taking up all my time and I don't want to deal with these things. And then you say it like marketing isn't contributing to revenue because sales and marketing doesn't have the trust relationship. Either historically the marketing leads are garbage and no one wants to pick up with them, or historically sales has not done anything with the marketing leads. And so marketing's like, why should I do stuff for sales? They're not going to pick up anything I do.
There's an erosion of trust.
Yeah.
There's no communication. And you ask a great question. Like, how do you incentivize that collaborative behavior? And God, I had this marketing VP. I think it was from the same company. And she said something along the lines of like, salespeople are so funny. They could come to you and say, hey, can I have a cookie? You know, like, hey, where are the leads at? And you go, oh, they're in the cookie jar. Oh, where's the cookie jar? It's over there on top of the fridge, right? And they just kind of stand there and they, well, can you go get the cookie jar for me? And then you're like, all right, fine. I'll go get the cookie jar. You know, can you do more work for me?
I like the ones with like lots of chocolate chips. So can you like find the ones that have chocolate chips?
You not that one. No,
I don't like oatmeal raisin. That one isn't. Yeah.
And then just like she goes on and she's like, so I get the cookie jar down, and they still look at you and they're like, well, can you open the cookie jar? And then to your point, they're like, no, I want the one at the bottom. And you go, okay. And you take it out and you go to hand it to him. And you know what the salesperson does? Can you put it in my mouth?
Yeah, well, you know, it's hard. It's a hard job.
It was, God, it was hilarious. Obviously, it was, you know, a little embellished, but I can understand a marketer's frustration with like, dude, I'm doing a lot of work, right? And it demonstrates the perceptive kind of dissonance between both parties or both organizations.
And it's so much dependent on the incentive, like how the salesperson is incentivized and how they've worked previously. Like if they're a channel salesperson, they're gonna be focused on the channel because it's comfortable, it's knowable, the deals come up way further along the funnel.
Yeah.
Like, and if they're a BDR to SDR to sales person, they're gonna have a better understanding of how you nurture an MQL to actual revenue.
Yeah. Totally. But kind of going back to, so we're observing that the dynamic, and now there's the how do you, like, what works, right? Like that's the concept of the call today. So for me, what I've noticed has worked in the past is sometimes it's a miracle, but it's a combination of events, right? Again, I always go back to people, process, systems. So you can have great people, you can have decent processes, but if you have no systems in which that data and information lives and is exchanged and kind of acts as your system of record, you're going off of tribal knowledge, anecdotes, a lot of emotion. And that can work, but it can't scale, right? Conversely, you could invest a ton in an amazing, you've got a CRM and you've got a great MarTech stack and again, decent processes, right? Stuff's flowing in, it's working. But you've got, I'm going to qualify when I say wrong people, but you have maybe personalities that clash. You just have a very, maybe like a rock star mentality team where everyone's just like a maverick and they're, you know what I mean? You have to look at those situations and you really have to genuinely curate. And I've seen great leadership step in and either have hard conversations or make hard decisions and say, I have to let this person go. Or I've seen someone low on the totem pole, like a BDR manager, fight for a system, like really fight for it with like hard data and really keen observations and drive that up the flagpole. And it's really impressive to see. And I would really just, for anyone that's looking at their organization or within an organization and saying, how do I make this work? And this goes back to our previous conversation of like being curious and listening, which is hard when you're in it and you're every day and you've got your accountabilities and you've got this. But man, take some time to just like step back and observe and say, what's not working? Like, how could things be better? And look at yourself and go, what could I be doing better? Like, am I failing because I don't have a system to like keep me accountable or to manage this for me? Do our processes, like, do they bottleneck at some point where there's like this cliff and things aren't being completed or seen to completion? Is there a poor handoff between the kind of the process hinges from one team to another? And just like document it and note it, and then engage other people within your organization, and not confrontationally, but seriously, and say, hey, I'm noticing these patterns. Do you feel the same way? Like, or do you disagree with my observations? And I tell you, when we go back to like what works, being curious and being thoughtful in positioning that conversation, that shit tends to unlock some pretty powerful A, conversation, and B, action in a short period of time. Whereas shit slinging and accusations and complaining, it's inertia.
Yeah, or blaming, and that the CRO role and like the revenue operations model is so helpful. Like
Yep.
it's so helpful to like break down all the parts.
Yeah.
Slamming. And like to assess what's actually contributing to revenue, right? Like having the perspective of like we're solving for revenue and understanding how these parts contribute. Okay. Is really it helps break down the silo between sales and marketing. Yeah. If you're saying like organizationally, what we're solving for is revenue, and as a leadership team, we're solving for revenue, and that like sales plays a part, marketing plays a part, all of the operations and actual execution plays a part. But like, I found that to be very refreshing as I gained more and more traction, and with more and more clients of mine, I talk about things through the lens of revenue rather than through the lens of marketing.
Yeah.
Because it's like a more interesting problem to solve, and it's a more interesting discussion to have than like, I don't know, I just read an article about putting like buttons to the left rather than the right. whatever like arts and crafts people think marketing is. Like, I find like talking about revenue is something that like you can get excited and start like problem solving for in a way that's more meaningful, more interesting.
I worked for a CEO once who made a really strong case for painting the walls of the office bright orange because it energizes people, and he thought that would generate more sales activity, and he was sending us like articles on the psychology of colors, and I had some real questions about how life got me into that position and who I had wronged in the past.
There was recently like someone went on some webinar about, it was COVID days, about how like yellow and black are like good colors to have on your background. So they had like these like safety like road construction color palette, which like for me is not a visually appealing, engaging like thing to have. But yeah, someone did some research about like the two most whatever vibrant colors to keep people's attention, and then but that's not.
So can we quantifiably measure the orange or the yellow or the black or the blue for generating leads? Probably not, folks. If you're having that conversation, something went way off the rails. So
where do you see it in sales? So like marketing does all this activity. There's the brand stuff. There's like the lead generating activities, the handoff to sales. Then there's like marketing isn't generating any revenue conversation. Like, where do you quantify all the pieces that happen on like the sales side of the equation?
For me, which is, by the way, as reasonable as hopefully it sounds, is extremely unpopular to anyone that I've ever managed as a sales leader. And sales is easy. You can measure almost everything up until very, very late stage of an opportunity. And here's what I mean by that. Biz dev. Have a CRM. Anyone that's performing any type of biz dev activity, they are operating out of the CRM, or they have plugins in their browser to make sure that that's captured in the CRM. Are they sending emails? Is it being opened? How many calls are they making? What's happening on those calls? Can you listen to call recordings? I've been able to sit down with BDRs, like one would make 40 calls and another would make 120 calls. And they could both only schedule 1 or 2 meetings per week, right? The BDR that was making 40 calls a day, it took them 10 to 15 minutes between every single call. Can you hear my dogs, by the way? Yeah. Freaking out. Mom left. So,
It's a disaster.
We'll try to power through it. If not, we could pick up on that.
I think we can strip out some background noise.
Yeah. Hold on, let me actually pause it. Let's do like a fade.
Okay.
So yeah, just going back to measuring activity. What works is getting in the weeds. And I know people kind of cringe at the big brotherness or the micromanaging, but listen, man, you're running a business. And here's what I've always held as the North Star of sales and marketing. Organizations always need salespeople and marketers. And more often than not, they're the last people to be cut. So if you're in any capacity working in a sales or marketing role and you're not performing and holding yourself to a high standard, developers, line workers, like those are the people that lose their jobs. And if you work at a company that has some type of offshore or international component, man, these people are living off of a fraction of what you make. And they're probably more talented than you. As tough as that is to hear. So I can understand a level of micromanagement, like someone standing behind you, breathing down your neck, like watching you make every call. But somebody needs to like support you. And I have to imagine if you're in a sales or marketing role, it's because you want to fast track to making money for yourself and to improve your earning potential. So going back to the point, what works in business development is getting in the weeds. Measure, measure, measure. You put somebody on a script, on a campaign, you listen to recordings of their calls. And if maybe you're using some type of dialer program, some auto dialer, you're listening in live. And you like, maybe they're falling down on objection handling. Maybe they're trying to articulate these really technical concepts. And you're realizing that when they get challenged, just the slightest, they completely fall down. It's like, holy shit, I got to train my team. Like they don't know what our product does. And people are actually genuinely asking about it and they're falling down. And there's going to be these bottlenecks in these biz dev conversations that you're going to have to chip away at. But man, if you're like diligent and attentive, I promise you, because I've done it a million times, all of a sudden it unlocks. And then you just figure out, where's my high watermark? Your high watermark could be 2 meetings a week. Your high watermark could be 8 meetings a week scheduled. And 75% of them show up. And 50% of those that show up on the meeting convert into simply a second meeting, right? And then you have to take that framework and then lay it on to, okay, BizDev scheduled a meeting for the salespeople. What are the salespeople doing on the first meeting? So if I have a 50% convert rate from first meeting to second meeting, why is that happening? Oh, well, 50% of our prospects just happen to be in market for what we do. Great. Why are you letting the other 50% of the people that wanted to talk to you go? Like, that's gold. And people look at it and they go, nah, this sucks. They don't want to buy right now. And it's like, oh my God, are you crazy? It's mad to like try to articulate that both to the front line, to the salespeople, but also to people at the top when they're just like, yeah, but they're not qualified. And I'm like, dude, qualified, by the way, I'm going to say this loudly for those in the back, qualification is not a moment in time. Qualification does not equal ready to buy. You got to get that out of your head. You got to get that out of your head. And that's another thing that what works is really honing in on what are your qualification criteria. Is this person somebody who in any meaningful way could benefit from what we do, whether it's in the past, right now, or in the future? That's a qualified prospect. That's somebody that you want to keep in the pipeline. And by the way, that 50%, and this goes back to what makes a great salesperson, those 50% who can't, won't, or shouldn't buy from you right now, if you continue to stay on their radar very selflessly, feed them information. What's happening in their market? What are you picking up on industry publications? How are you just maybe connecting the dots for them with an outsider perspective, maybe even referring them to another potential partner or business that could solve that specific problem that they've identified, and you have nothing to gain from it. They will come back to you as a personal brand and as a business. So yeah, that's just from like the very tippy top of the funnel, Sarah. You can absolutely measure the hell out of what's working and what's not, refine it, iterate on it in a way where you'll say, this campaign is generating so much activity that's converting into actual opportunities. and then you can measure from the top to the middle of the funnel. It gets trickier from the middle to the bottom of the funnel. We could probably get into that into another call, but yes, measure, document, and when I say iterate, because we've joked about this, iterate doesn't mean throw the entire strategy, ball it up and throw it.
It doesn't mean pivot.
Yeah.
It means
I'm calling everybody just did on Twitter and LinkedIn. No, that's not what I mean by iterate. I mean, it's like change a word, right? Like train your people and do like iterate on some of the background things that you're doing.
And I mean, the like we were talking about before, the leads are so, like, qualified leads are so hard to get. Like, they're so precious, like actual qualified, right title, right position, right company, right everything. And keeping them alive is ideally a joint sales and marketing effort. And it's not like an automated email sequence.
Yeah.
It's just not. Like, you actually have to know who they are.
Yeah.
You have to, like, have notes about the conversation so that you can come back with relevant things. You have to remember where they are. You have to invite them to a dinner. You have to, like, when this CEO's in town, you need to see if you can get them together. Like, it is like highly personal, highly attuned, right? But it's not like personalization. It's like being personable. And
I've had the distinct pleasure of working with some marketing manager SDR combos that operated that radar screen, right? Like, they were just tracking these bogeys, and like, this guy's going to be here at this time and just wrote a blog post about this. And I noticed that this company is and like connected all of these dots and just started this, like, triggered an avalanche of activity. And then boom, sales guy gets a meeting and runs home with it, right? And I'm like, how the fuck are you two not getting paid twice as much? Idiot that just had to show up. And no offense, sales guys, I'm not saying you're an idiot, but there's a lot of.
But yeah, a really well-attuned field marketer, extroverted field marketer who's in the CRM, like, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. And and this is probably a conversation for another day, which is the nature versus nurture, right? Because we're people, process, systems. Systems are easy. They're dumb. You can go out and buy a system. If you know how to, like, customize the system for your business, all you need is process and good people on top of that. Processes can be fairly complex, but the complexity just, goes up as you scale as a business, and there's other touch points and so on and so forth. And you do need a good, again, person. But man, the question that I've seen asked time and time again is, well, who hasn't heard that just go hire a rock star, right? And then, well, do you want like a medium rock star? Do you want to?
Or like $45,000 a year.
Been in the industry for 20 years, yeah. Has 4 college degrees, willing to work for $15 an hour. Yeah. But I do stand by it. It's a combination of, there are people that are just at the right place in their career, where they're not perfect or excel, like they have stuff to learn, but they're willing to learn in a way that they're going to grow. And those are the people, like, short answer is it's both, and there's some trial and error there, but culturally you have to have an organization that encourages that.
And that's where a diligent manager or a micromanager, whatever it is. I mean, for me, they've been foundational for growing as a marketer. I worked with a CMO who was so tough, and she would print out everything and come with like a red pen. And she went to Catholic school, so she had like this very neat cursive writing, and we would get back. And I thought I was intense about copywriting, and I am, but like everything, she would mark up, she'd print out and mark up everything.
Wow.
And she's like, and so I told my team, I was like, we're just trying to get things approved. Like, we need to be buttoned up so we get approval immediately. And like, it was a good learning. It's good to have that level of rigor and like to set the bar really high. Like yeah.
No, you know what? You bring up a good point, and maybe we end it on this note is there's the platitude of like lead from the front, right? We all know the leaders that are the visionaries. You know, they say everything and then they delegate, and then they're constantly vexed and upset why, you know, their vision isn't being executed to the T of whatever's inside of their head. And then there's those like you've just gave a really great example for, is they're in it, like they're doing the sucky stuff. Like it's like, dude, I'm a CEO of a company. Like no CEO wants to be like copywriting and proofreading emails, but that's kind of important if you really believe in your vision, and you got to like roll your sleeves up and get down in it with your team. And that's really what great leaders and great cultures are predicated on. And you know what? When you're down at the bottom, it sucks. It's scary because you're like, man, like scary people are looking at my work. And in the other situation where it's like the visionary leader who's off like goofing off and golfing and you know what I mean? Like, or just doing like visionary things, they're never paying attention to your work. So what's the environment that you foster? It's not scary, right? You're like, oh man, I can do whatever I want. This is great. Like nobody's paying attention to me, but shit never gets done. And then somebody ends up getting thrown in. That's where people get fired more than the situation where you actually have an engaged leadership team or leader at the very top.
Yeah. And I mean, it's that, right? It's helpful to know how to do well in your job. Like it's helpful to know.
Yeah.
And then on the leadership side, right, there's that adage, like how you do one thing is how you do everything, which is a real pain in the ass. Like but like, I just really, it's a good principle.
Yeah.
It's principle to hold.
I think deep down, what everyone really wants, even though we're afraid of it, is I want a mentor. I want someone who's 2 to 5 years ahead of me, above me, you know? I want someone that challenges me in the right way. They're not too far ahead of me that they're aloof or they're so advanced that it just feels like there's a complete disconnect in how we relate. You don't want somebody that's equal to you because then you're both just, you know, you're blind leading the blind. And God forbid you ever get someone that's below you that's on the top.
I mean, it's never happened.
Never been there. You're just like, what the? I'm sorry. Whoever's up there. Thank you.
Exactly.
And Hail Marys and Our Fathers and karma and retribution and all that good stuff. Anyways, great conversation. Thank you everyone for participating. Please, goes without saying, please leave comments, ask us questions. We'd love to engage with the community. If you're hearing stuff that you would like us to expand on, or you have any questions or topics you think that we should address because you like the way that we approach it, just again, leave it in the comments and we will absolutely bring those up in the next week.
Yeah. If you disagree with us, let us know.
Yeah.
We love a fight.
Yeah. If you're a salesperson or marketer that I offended and I called you an idiot, then sling mud back my way. I probably deserve it. So
awesome. Thanks,
all right,
Steve.
we'll see you next week.